All right, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I want to thank you once again for being a part of the Job Club Let's Talk meeting that we have twice a month on the second and third Mondays of each month. And today, I certainly want to thank everyone for tuning in. This particular event is being recorded because we have a very special guest that's coming in today. And as I had spoken with some of you prior to this event, that I was really going to push hard for our CEO, Mr. Jeff Carr, to come aboard and be able to join us and kind of answer some of the questions that some of you have already emailed to me about and things of this nature. But we want to thank him for coming in, and thank you so much, Mr. Carr, for being part of this show.
Oh, happy to be here, James, and happy to interact with as many people as I can via questions. It's always funner to be in person, but it sounds like this was the best way to do this, so I'm happy to do it.
Oh, wow. I would have loved to have that. So listen, so today, I have the American flag behind us. And so today is a very special day, a little somber day because of the events of what happened 22 years ago on 9/11. So I always, every time 9/11 comes across and wherever I am and I'm able to get around a lot of people, things of that nature, I always kind of ask the question, number one, what does 9/11 mean to you as an American, and then what does it mean in terms of where were you at on 9/11? If you just want to just kind of talk about that.
Yeah, well, it is one of those, I think for like my parents' generation, everybody remembered where they were when the attack on Pearl Harbor happened, right?
Yeah.
But for my generation, it's where were you at on September 11th? And I was actually on sabbatical. I had received a sabbatical award from a local foundation here called the Durfee Foundation, and we were actually in Hawaii.
Wow.
Which on the one hand sounds like a wonderful place, but when we got a phone call, Hawaii's 6 hours behind
New York,
the East Coast. And so we actually received a call from my wife's mother that about 5:30, and we were supposed to fly home that day. And we received the call, and her mother said, you need to turn on the television. And we turned on the TV at about, it was about 5:45 or 6, just in time to see the second plane hit one of the towers there.
Yeah.
And then all the flights were grounded. So here it was kind of surreal because we're in this beautiful place, but we couldn't leave, and no one was coming. And it was just this sense of all we wanted to do was get home and be with family. And for me, family was also this community center I ran in the neighborhood near 3rd and Vermont. And so, yeah, I'll never forget, that day. And I think the other thing that, we were already starting to have kind of a divided, our politics were a little bit contentious. You might recall that had just, we had just had a really contentious election, close election in 2000. But, that's really the last time I can remember where it felt like the country kind of rallied and came together and said, you know what, we're not a D or an R,
right.
And we're all going to come together.
Yeah.
And so for me, gosh, I wish we could get back to that.
Wouldn't that be amazing? Yeah. Wouldn't that be amazing? I remember so vividly because I got up that morning. I went to this little favorite breakfast spot of mine, and then on the way home, I always like to listen to 1070 news radio. I guess I was 38 at the time, and so I was just transferring over into that age where I stopped listening to music all the time. I always start getting some information. So I'm listening to KNX, and KNX, they had said there's been an accident at the World Trade Center. And I guess I was probably about 15 minutes from home. And then I was like, okay, well, let me turn to a different radio station. And the next radio station I had on, it was 2 DJs on there, and they were joking about some plane had hit World Trade Center. And I guess by now I'm at least about maybe 5 minutes from home. And my home was literally in back of LAX. I lived in Westchester at the time. So I hurried up inside the house because my balcony, I can look out and I could see the runway to the airport. And I'm going to and running in just to watch the news. And then when I saw the second plane hit, it was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
I've never in my life, I literally saw LAX runway go completely empty. And I literally watched it with my own two eyes. And I was like, wow. So yes, that's a day that, we'll never forget, but I've always kind of like to reflect on it. And it's a day for me that that holds a lot of weight. My dad was a military guy, even though he had passed away prior to this event. But I know how he would have felt about it, as patriotic as he was. But the one thing that you did say, Mr. Carr, is that, it did bring a lot of us together. And I hope that this is something, I hope that we can get back to that way sooner than later. So listen, we're going to dive into it. So when did you first come on to be CEO of JVS?
I want the name.
No, I became CEO in February of this year. So February of 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been here almost 7 months and have really enjoyed my time here and getting acquainted with what JVS does as an organization, more importantly, with the people like you who actually do the work. And it's been fantastic. So really enjoyed it.
That's great. That's great. So when you came on, just like any other thing, you have to assess everything in this thing. So what was very appealing about coming on to JVS?
Well, there's two things. The thing that originally attracted me was when I got a call from the search firm asking me if I'd even be willing to consider this role. I did what I normally do. The first thing I went to the website and I looked at the history, because anytime I've been anywhere, I want to know who I'm getting involved with, what their history is, right? Because the history, past is prologue. And so I looked at the history and was really taken by the fact that JVS SoCal was established in 1931 by a small group of Jewish immigrants who found themselves here in Southern California. And when I think about what the world was like for Jews in 1931, and unfortunately is still this way in many cases, and the fact that they recognized that for people to establish a new life here in Southern California, immigrants and refugees, that employment was going to be key to their being able to establish themselves and care for themselves and their families. And the second thing is that the Jewish values like Tikkun Olam and other Jewish values really drove them to very quickly not just focus on other Jewish people, but they recognized, because they understood what it was like to be a person and a group of people on the margins of our society. They very quickly said, we know what that experience is, and we want to reach out to other people who find themselves dislocated, who find themselves oppressed, who find themselves pushed to the margins of our society. And that's where we're going to put our time and effort into helping others who've a similar experience in us. And that, to me, has been the history for the last 92 years. And that's consistent with my own personal faith and tradition of really wanting to be involved in the lives of folks that, as my friend Father Greg Boyle says, who've been pushed to the margins. And we go there to find solidarity with those who have been marginalized, so that someday we erase the lines between us and them. And so that was what really drew me to JVS. And then the fact that, we serve over 30,000 people a year in one of our, nearly 40 different programs.
Yeah. So I started January 30th, and it's just, I'm not even going to get into it. One of these days, you and I will have to talk, and I can just kind of break down to you how this job, just literally how I got the job. But like you, I had to, when I heard about the job, I did my research on it, and this and that. But one of the things that really impressed me when I got on the job was the culture at JVS. For me, that was important. As we get older in life, there's certain things where you will take, it's more important than just the dollar bill, if you want to say.
Yep.
And so, and the environment at JVS, but the culture here was something that I really, really liked. So speak about the culture, about what represents JVS for you. I think a lot of our job seekers, they may not see exactly what's behind the doors of JVS, but talk about the culture at JVS and what it means to you.
Well, first of all, I think I can't remember who it was that says it, but they said, culture eats strategy for lunch every single day of the week.
Every day.
And I agree with that. And I think the strength of your culture will really determine the greatness of your success or the lack thereof, right? Yeah. And I think for me, the most important thing about our culture is that, frankly, James, you and other people like you who are on the front line of interacting with our customers, our clients, the people who come to us seeking a better life through employment, you all are the most important people at JVS. And my role is really just to support and remove the barriers and to ensure that you have all the resources and the tools that you need to help folks in their career search, their career path, whatever it is that you're trying to help remove those barriers. And so that is really my management philosophy. Robert Greenleaf was a guy who really focused on servant leadership and made that popular, in the last 30 or 40 years. And the whole idea is that the role of leadership is to really be servants of the rest of the organization. So almost like, typically in an organizational corporate structure, you have a pyramid, right?
Right.
And the top of the pyramid is where someone in my position sits at the top. And I really don't believe in that style of leadership. I really believe in an upside down pyramid. Right. And that my job is to be supporting and nurturing. And that's the job of management and leadership, to be able to support the folks that are doing the front line. And the other thing is leadership. The woman who's been doing coaching with me for the last half dozen years, executive coaching, she defines leadership this way. Leaders are people who influence those around them and also are influenced by people around them, right? So being a leader is not something that is determined by the title you have in a particular organization, but it's about your ability to influence people and to be influenced by others. And I think that gives us an opportunity at JVS, as a culture, for everybody who works at JVS to be a leader, right? Because we all have the ability to influence others and to be influenced by others as well.
Hey, Mr. Carr, you just hit it out the ballpark. My dad, who I always refer to, not only was he my father, but he was also a pastor of our church, as well as he had his own business. And the one thing that used to be driven into me as a kid growing up was, you cannot lead if you can't listen. And you have to be able to listen to what people are saying. Because if you think that you have all the answers and, you want to just crack the whip all the time, that's just not the way to lead. So that's an excellent point that you made. Coming on to JVS, the first day when I walked in, I got there very early. And so where I sit at, I'm at the way tail end of the office, so I don't get a chance to see everybody's coming in. But I remember going at lunch that particular day. I had an opportunity to kind of walk around, and I saw the landscape of diversity within our office. I was like, wow, I've never been on a job to where that much diversity was in an office. So speak about the culture of diversity in the workforce place, and why is that so important, especially in this day and time?
Well, you are so right. That's one of the things that, when I first got here, I started doing visits to offices, which JVS has about 20 different locations, geographic locations. And the thing that I was struck by very quickly were two things. Number one, you are so right. Most of the people I met, they did not look like me. Right. And, I am a cisgender white male who drips privilege just when I walk in a room. I also happen to be 6'3" and 250 pounds. So, some people think I was like a linebacker in college.
Yeah.
So the great thing to me is that our workforce looks like Los Angeles, right? It's got people who come from every culture, race, ethnicity, background. And it really is a thing of beauty for me. It's sort of, I like to think of, Bishop Desmond Tutu in South Africa used to talk about the rainbow people of God. I mean, we have the rainbow people of God at JBS. But the second thing that I love about JBS is the number of people who work for us who have lived experience is remarkable. I'm guessing it's well over 50% of our employees are people who know what it's like. And I think this is really important for job seekers, for clients who come to us and customers, is the people they're typically interacting with are people who know the journey they've been on. If they were in our GAIN program, in our welfare and work program, the number of employees who I've met who say, hey, the reason I'm here at JBS is because I know what it was like to be on public assistance. Veterans, the number of veterans, we probably have half a dozen veterans who were formerly unhoused. And when I asked them why they were JBS, they said, well, because so-and-so who was on our veterans team, they found me, they rescued me, and I want to do the same for others, right? In our refugee program, the number of people who work for us who were refugees themselves, who fled all manner of evil in some other country and came here to establish a better life, and now are saying, I want to take my own personal experience, my lived experience, and share that with others. To me, that is one of the most powerful things that exist as part of JBS's culture. And I think sometimes we haven't traditionally valued that lived experience as much as we do formal education. Now, I'm not against formal education. I want everybody to get as much education as they can. But I also think sometimes we devalue that lived experience. And I really am a believer in lived experience. And I'm just ecstatic as I've been here the last 7 months to discover how many people have that here at JBS.
Mr. Carr, I can't, I'm smiling from ear to ear because in 2001 and 2002, I lived out of my car for 2 years. And I grew up middle class. I always get teased because a lot of my friends, they always used to say, they used to call me Fresh Prince of South Central LA, although that I was a little bit above where South Central LA. But because, I grew up and I didn't have to walk for anything. And so fast forward, I'm not going to make this about me, but just real briefly, things didn't go well. I ended up sleeping in my car. And I always remembered that if this car ever breaks down, I am on the street, like literally. And I could have gone and knocked on my sister's door and said, I need a place. But for whatever reason, I felt like I had to take this journey by myself. And I learned so much about myself during those 2 years. So fast forward, I get this job at JBS. And so now this job has given me the opportunity that when I have people come into our office and I'm able to talk to them, and I always tell people at our job, I say, hey, listen, have a smile on your face when you talking to these people. You have no idea what they may have gone through the night before. You don't have any idea if they were able to take a shower, if they were able to eat. You don't know where they slept at last night. So show some empathy when these individuals come into the office, because when I'm able to sit down and talk to individuals, I can resonate that to them and they're able to hear it. And they're just like, well, how did you get to this place? Perseverance. It's just perseverance all by itself. So this will lead up to the next question, and I have to get you out of here because Suzanne is going to kill me.
Well, no, can I just make a quick comment that there's something, at the last organization I was at, and we've got time, don't worry about time.
Okay. All right.
We had a pretty significant mental health program, a residential and an outpatient program for adolescents and kids. And I'm not a clinician by training, But I learned about what's called trauma-informed care, which is, I was like, I'm not that smart, but they broke it down to me. And they taught me this, which has really stuck with me. And I think it's really powerful and something I want all of our JVS employees to know and to think about is when people walk into your door or walk through any one of our doors at JVS, there are two different questions we can ask those people. And those two different questions lead you down two completely different roads. The first question that unfortunately most people in our society ask someone when they see someone who's struggling, who needs some help, right? They look at them and say, "What's wrong with you?" And when I ask you what's wrong with you, that creates a dynamic between us. It's sort of us and them, like, what's wrong with you, right?
Right.
If you just flip that question, and instead of asking what's wrong with you, if you ask this question and you say, "James, what happened to you?"
Yeah.
All of a sudden,
Yep.
that changes the nature of the conversation and opens a door for folks to be able to say, "Well, let me tell you what happened." And it also doesn't suggest that you did something wrong. It suggests that something happened to you. And you know what? You can't be fully human and walk this journey called life without having things happen to you.
Oh, yeah.
And some of us, things happens to us, but we have a safety net, or we have some sort of resiliency to that thing, but not everyone has that. And it's not their fault. They just don't have that. Right. And so when you ask that different question, my experience is that changes the nature of the conversation and leads to a place where then you can really come alongside someone and walk with them in that journey for them to find the skills and the needs and the assistance they need to move on in their life.
And you hit it right there. My goodness, because there was a program I worked for, and we had to do a homeless count, and we would be downtown LA and just parts of Santa Monica, and everybody has a story.
You betcha.
Everybody has a story, and some people who I would feel like I would kind of resonate with, I would ask them the same story. Hey, what got you to this point? And they would open up. Someone would cry. We'd cry together, and they would tell me about this. And some of them, it's like if things could have just changed just a little bit, their pathway would have been a lot different than what it came out to be. And some of them are like just right on the cuff, or are getting back on that road to success, but they just need a little bit of help. So at JVS was just, I tell people all the time, I since I've been on with JVS, I'll have people to call me who I've had relationships with. "Oh, James, we're going to pull you. You're going to come over here and work for us." And there is nothing in the world I love more than helping people, because when somebody can call me up and say, "Hey, James, I got the job here," that's priceless. Yeah. Or if someone can even just call, and sometimes I'm not able to get everybody a job at a particular place, but sometimes they'll just call and just, "Hey, James, thank you for talking. Thank you for listening." And so, which leads to the question I'm getting ready to ask you: what does customer service means to you? Because we are stewards on our jobs as customer service. And so, and I always liken it to like being a nurse or doctor. That's a customer service job. Being a policeman, we're servicing the community. So customer service, Mr. Carr, what does that look like to you at JVS?
Well, first of all, I would say, and you've probably heard me say this in a few town halls recently, James, is the first thing about that means there's no wrong door. Okay. So when somebody comes to JVS, we got 40 different programs, 20 different geographic locations. Someone may walk in off the street, and the program they happen to walk into may not be the best program for them. Right. But good customer service or no wrong door means that our employees are prepared and ready to say, "Oh, you know what? You probably don't qualify for this particular program that we run here, but don't worry. We have another location, or we have another program that we can connect you with. which I think is going to be the place where you're really going to get the help that you need, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's first starting with the needs of the customer or the person who walks through our doors who needs our assistance, right? And it's really focused on what their needs are and assessing what those are, and then finding the best path at JVS for us to help them, as opposed to thinking, well, this is my program, or this is what I'm focused on, and trying to put like a square peg into a round hole, right?
Mm-hmm.
It really needs to be, for us to be customer focused and really start with the needs of the people, and then find a way to get them the help that best serves them.
Right. Because the demographic the majority of the demographic that comes into our office are those individuals that need assistance. And sometimes the majority, they need assistance, not in jobs, but in other areas as well. And so one of the things that I continue to harp on is just, hey, not only do we want to keep smiles on our faces and this and that, but we're also sometimes life coaches, right, on our jobs. And sometimes, we have to bring the individual in and we just have to listen to them for a little while. But for me personally, and for what I've been able to see with the ones I've been able to work with, is it does wonders when someone have a listening ear to talk to for a while. And like you just said, we may not be able to get you what you need right there, but the resources that JVS has is such an abundance of resources that no one can really leave the office of where we are empty-handed, so to speak, because there's always if we can't give you the answer, we have other avenues to where we can go ahead and get those answers addressed for you. So I kind of like how you said that we were able to, direct you somewhere else with that. So going forward, Mr. Carr, we talked about the culture, we talked about the diversity, things of this nature. So in doing this, I talked with a couple of individuals who's already enrolled into the programs, and they told me, say, give us a series of questions that that you would like for me to ask our CEO. And so every answer was, what can make the process easier for enrollment? And we understand that, hey, there has to be, everything has their rules and regulations and this and that. Is there any type of encouraging word that you would like to give our job seekers out there for our enrollment process?
Oh, I wish I could wave a wand and just change some of the government bureaucracy. As you may remember, James, I spent 4.5 years working in local city government here. And that was when I was on the inside, one of the things I really learned was that, unfortunately, we have lots of rules and regulations, which are necessary to ensure that funds get used correctly and appropriately. But sometimes that means we create a mound of paperwork. So what I always tried to do when I couldn't change what was required to actually enroll in a program, was to do our best to inform people, and in this case, job seekers, here's the information we're going to need, so that people didn't feel like they wasted their time when they came in to see us, that they were prepared with whatever documentation or information that they needed to compile, so that when they got there, we could be as effective and expeditious as possible to help them get enrolled in whatever program it was for. But yeah, I don't have any magic wand. I wish I could change all that. But I think helping people be prepared, because, people, they take a bus, might take an hour, 2-hour bus ride or whatever to get to our location. And then they find out that they can't do what they hoped they could do. That's very frustrating. And I always like to say, actually being poor is exhausting.
Yes.
When you don't have resources, whether it's transportation or whatever it is really, and a lot of these programs require all this documentation, and it's exhausting. And I think that's another important thing for our employees at JVS, to be mindful of how exhausting it is to be able to participate in some of this stuff. and to have a little extra patience, to have a little extra compassion and empathy, as you said, for people who walk through the doors. Look, we're not like a movie theater or Disneyland, right? I mean, people are here because they need help, which is why I would start with everybody. If I was on the front line, I would say, hey, before we talk about anything else, can you tell me what happened that brought you here?
Yeah. Yeah.
What happened? How did you get here? And what happened that brought you here? Because you may learn in that quick 5-minute response, I may learn lots of things and I may get lots of information that then informs how I can actually really help the person the way they need, the help that they need.
Right. Well, listen, I certainly appreciate it. I'm going to end this on one last question. And so this also comes from some of the job seekers. I get a lot of job seekers that come in and talk about mental health. And, you know, mental health really start hitting in news. Well, let me put it like this. Mental health became, it's not taboo like it used to be.
That's true.
It used to be to where if you said something about mental health, you know, people were looking at ways on how to relieve you from your particular job, you know, or things of this nature. So what are some of the resources that JVS may be looking for in the future or right now that we may have to address those mental health needs that our job seekers come into the office with?
Well, first of all, you are so right that mental health was a taboo subject for so long. I think, look, I would never want to go back and live through the pandemic again.
Right.
I would say one of the, you know, anytime you go through this, you know, challenging experiences, there are of course sort of silver lining or golden nuggets that come out of that. And I think one of the things that came out of the pandemic is that it became okay to talk about the issue of mental health, and that lots of people were struggling during the pandemic. So I think the first thing is for our job seekers to know that it's okay. If you're struggling with some sort of mental health issues, depression, God forbid, suicidal ideation, where you've started to think about it's just not worth me being here anymore. I please, I would say to the job seekers, talk to someone. There's lots of numbers, 311 is a number, you can call to get access to help. If particularly for veterans, we have a really strong partnership for veterans with the Department of Mental Health here in Los Angeles County to help provide some of that mental health services. But I know we also have additional resources at our various work source centers and American Job Centers where we have referrals to get access to mental health. But it's so important. I think you're right to acknowledge that and then to seek out help and assistance.
Yep. Well, listen, Mr. Carr, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come on here and be with us. This was absolutely phenomenal. I'm quite sure that this interview will go over very well with our job seekers. To be able to put a face behind the name is very important. And just to be authentic as you were is really important. So I really appreciate the time that you invested into this. And I'm hoping that this may be able to springboard to some other things that would be helpful for us to be able to get the message across. Mr. Carr, I'm going to ask you to stay on. I'm about to stop the recording right now, but if you could just stay on just real quick. 1 second.
Okay, and thanks so much for letting me participate in this, James.
You got it.